Now, NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio with Lee Witting, whether you're listening on TalkZone, by podcast, through the archives of our ad-free shows on our YouTube channel, or by connecting through our Facebook page. From time to time, I like to read stories of NDEs and other spiritually transformative experiences, both from the files of IANDS and also from those sent to me from listeners to NDE Radio. Today's show begins with one recent letter I received and concludes with reports from IANDS as well. For those experiencers who would like to submit their own stories, I'll give you an email address at the end of the show where you can send them in. In her letter to us, this experiencer wrote, I experienced an NDE in 2015 after attempting to commit suicide. I was in my early 30s and a single mother to a beautiful little girl. My relationship with her father was volatile and abusive from the start and only worsened throughout the years. By the time my little girl came along, we were no longer together. As they wheeled me from the hospital with her in my arms, a social worker slipped me her card. She was a domestic violence advocate. I'll never forget that moment. Needless to say, I've raised my daughter alone, and to say it's been hard would be an understatement. At 1 year old, she was diagnosed with hydrocephalus and had to have emergency life-saving surgery. She also has mild cerebral palsy and later developed epilepsy. I've been struggling with crippling depression since. At the time of my attempt, she was about 7, and I was living with a friend, working overnight in different clubs as a dancer, something I'm ashamed of, but it allowed me to be present during the day and work while she was asleep. Most local daycares were not equipped to care for her, and I didn't have family support. My life was a mess, and I was tired, drained. Long story short, after a fight with her father turned physical again, the humiliation and frustration pushed me over the edge. I don't remember much leading up to it. I just remember dropping my daughter off with him and giving up. I didn't believe he would ever treat her the way he did me. I thought she'd be safe. My memories from that day are like a slideshow. I was sitting in my car, and I'm not entirely sure if I saw myself swallow the entire bottle of pills as a reflection in the mirror, or if I actually watched myself take them. All I know is that I watched the tears stream down my face, and the next thing I knew, I was in total darkness. I remember looking around, and there was nothing, no time, and I had no body. Yet I was conscious and aware. I could think just like always. It was just more like energy or a spirit. At some point, although no words were spoken, it was communicated to me that something evil was coming from an even darker place below me, and that it was crawling up to get me, to drag me down with it. I didn't hear or see anything, but I knew it was coming, and that if it took me, wherever I was going wasn't good, and I would never be able to return. I was terrified and immediately began to pray, repeating Yeshua, 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 over and over, screaming it. I'd never before referred to Jesus as Yeshua. And then I woke up on the floor, on an airbed in the house of my friend. I have no recollection of how I got there. When I went to stand up, I stood for a few seconds and then fell to the ground. I was unable to walk, so I army crawled out into the hallway and tried to slide down the stairs. I'm still not sure why or where I was trying to go, but my friend saw me and picked me up, carrying me to his room where he called 911. I didn't know it at the time, but I had experienced a mini stroke that left me unable to walk for 24 hours. After recovering, I was sent to the psych ward where I was prescribed more antidepressants. During my time there, I remembered that I had left my daughter with her father, and although I was weak, broken, and tired, I knew I needed to get to her. I was eventually moved to a crisis center And when I called, he would hang up on me, insult me, and speak harshly to her while she was speaking to me. I could hear the brokenness and fear in her voice. She would whisper to me, "When are you coming to get me, Mommy?" And I would fall completely apart. I don't know where the strength came from, but I got up. I took whatever medicines they offered, and from there, they were able to get us into a local domestic violence shelter. Although it was the absolute most terrifying decision I had ever had to make, I went. The moment I was released, I went straight to my baby's school to pick her up. I pulled up right next to his car, ready for whatever war I was going to need to fight, but he just looked at me and pulled off. He never wanted to keep her. He never wanted anything. He just wanted to hurt me. Our experience at that shelter was one of the most beautiful experiences of our lives. I made friends, held babies, and learned so much about myself and the strength and gifts God has given me. Before attempting to take my life, I used to sit and watch NDEs on YouTube for hours, hoping that someone would say they saw heaven, because I was taught that those who commit suicide go to hell, and I was looking for a way out. Although I am grateful and understand that calling his name and being given a second chance is a blessing, I couldn't help but feel rejected. I had watched so many NDEs where Jesus greeted someone, or that their deceased family members were there with a smile. Then there was me in hell. With everything I had been through, all I wanted was a hug and some encouragement, but instead I saw darkness and felt fear. I came back with so many more questions than answers, but I'm still here. My daughter will be 16 in June. I've been teaching her to drive. Her neurologist looked me in my face years ago and said that she would never ride a bicycle. My baby tried every summer for hours on end. Some days she'd fall down and she would cry, and then I'd cry, and we'd both just sit there crying together. I'd been praying she didn't break a bone, praying that God would heal her. Her hydrocephalus made it so that she was unable to fit into the helmets in the store, so it was extra scary. But guess what? She did it, and she's been riding since the age of 13. I made sure her neurologist was the first person I sent the video to, but she didn't respond. I know God is with us and with her, but I feel like my soul is tired. I go back and forth between thanking God for how far she's come and cursing him for her suffering. Lately, I feel like I'm back where I was in 2015. Back then, the strength I had to get up and fight, I don't have anymore. Antidepressants leave me feeling groggy and numb. I sleep a lot and quit my job and to move into income-based housing for the safety net and ability to be at home with her. Uber is our only source of income, but it isn't nearly enough, and it's hard on my car. Every week, it's something. If it isn't the engine light, it's the tire, and sometimes it just gets to be too much. The neighborhood isn't safe. The children are mean, and my truck has been scratched and vandalized more than once. She can't go outside and play. I won't even let her take out the trash. I feel like a failure, no direction, no purpose. She feels smothered, and I feel depleted. I'm a good mom, but I've dived so deep into mommyhood that I have no identity. I only know how to survive. Sometimes I just blurt out that I want to go home when I'm already there, and I know it's my spirit, and that it's not this home I am longing for. The only thing tethering me to this earth is her. I love her more than anything. I know she needs me. I know I have a story and a powerful testimony, but I've always felt like you should wait until it's over to give it. But that can't be right, because life never stops. All we can do is take things day by day. I don't know where to start, but I do believe that the happiness I've longed for is tied to pulling others from this dark place. Perhaps this is a step in that direction. Thank you for listening. Signed, Cynthia. Now, normally I don't reply on air to experiences I read, but we couldn't contact her personally, so let me respond right now. Thank you, Cynthia, for sending your very pain-filled story to us. I'm sure that what you're going through will resonate with other listeners and give those in despair a glimmer of hope. Your impulse to call on Jesus at the critical moment, and that you were spared on that account, will help others who need to hear about the power of God's forgiveness and love. I urge you to remember that the whole answer to your depression today is right there in the story. Jesus is there for you always, and you must trust in him and his love for you and for your daughter. I'll pray for you, Cynthia, and I'm sure many of our listeners will do the same. This next story comes from the files of IANDS and concerns a young child questioning Earth's realities. This girl is taken one night into a golden yellow light where she meets three light beings and Jesus. She speaks of Jesus' pure gaze, patience, and kindness. The experiencer writes, "My experience took place more than 50 years ago when I was 5, and from then on I have wondered why I experienced this. Maybe it happened to comfort me in a stressful time. I was a happy child at home with my family, but as I went to kindergarten, I met children who were really mean and cruel. They, for example, laughed at a child from a foreign country just because of her name, and I could deeply feel the pain of this girl. I was so sad that I couldn't do anything about it, and sometimes in the evening I lay in bed and cried and wondered why I was here on Earth. We were not very religious, but my mom had said a little prayer every evening with me, and in that time I started praying in a very natural way, all by myself, to God and Jesus. And then one night I had my experience. I don't remember a tunnel or anything like that. The first thing I remember is that I entered an unearthly realm in a yellow golden light. I could see soft hills that stretched out to eternity, as it seemed. I didn't see people or trees. Suddenly, three beings of light appeared. They looked like silhouettes and had kind of long dresses on. I didn't see faces clearly and didn't know who they were, but obviously they knew me and greeted me very heartily. They didn't walk, but floated towards me and told me by mind thought to accompany them. So I floated with them, and it seemed quite natural to me. I wasn't even very astonished about this or afraid. They showed me various places, and I received a lot of information. I had a lot of questions as a child, and here in this realm, I got the answer to every question in every moment that I just thought it. I received answers about the universe, how and why everything existed, why there is good and bad, and so on. But unfortunately, I wasn't able or allowed to take this knowledge with me. Everything was full of energy and alive. I could even see the vibrating energy. And I remember standing in front of a gigantic wall which had an infinite number of drawers. And I was told that all knowledge that exists was stored in there. This place was so filled with energy that to me it seemed like yellow and red fire or flames, but it didn't hurt. It was amazing. Then finally we arrived in a landscape that looked like a meadow with plants and animals, almost like on Earth, but more colorful and alive. I saw a herd of sheep, and a man among them came towards me, and I recognized him as Jesus. In contrast to the beings of light, he looked like a human, and I could clearly see his face. I was so in awe that I got down on my knees. I was 5 years old, and except for having been baptized, I didn't attend any service in church, and religion didn't play a large role in our family. But it seemed to me at that moment that my soul was quite old and remembered this place. I really felt at home, and all that happened felt completely natural to me. I wanted to stay in this beautiful place. Jesus lifted me up and told me by thought telepathy that I should go back to Earth. I was shown how sad my parents would be if I stayed with him, but at that moment I just thought this wouldn't matter that much because they would meet me here in this place soon after. Time seemed to play no role at all. Jesus seemed to smile and was very patient and kind with me. He led me to a place where I could see kind of a large glass on the ground that looked a bit like a TV screen. and he told me to look down. I could see Earth from above, not only at that moment, but I could see the future. I saw the rainforest being destroyed, storms and fire and much more, and also some pictures of my personal future life, my profession as a psychologist working with children, and some persons that would be very important to me, such as the man I fell in love with many years later, and even his house near a woods. Jesus told me that I would be able to easily get in contact with animals and care about them, and that I could take part in protecting the environment. He said something that I similarly read in the Bible years later, quote, "Whatever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, you do to me." Quote. In the Bible, this refers to humans, but at the moment it referred to the small animals. I still didn't want to leave this place and him, but then he looked at me, and until today I remember his eyes, and even more the kindness and love that he expressed through them. I wasn't forced to go back, but he looked at me in such a pure way with infinite goodness and kindness. In Germany, we call it Goethe, that I was totally ashamed to have hesitated to go back to Earth to fulfill my task or purpose. At the moment that I felt the shame, I agreed inside, and in that instant, with a great whoosh, I kind of fell down through a space, back to Earth and into my body. I saw planets and the darkness of outer space, and then the Earth from above, and it looked like a toy landscape. At that moment, I had the feeling that life on Earth is like a theater play in which everyone has a part to play, but which isn't real at all. In my experience, all my senses had been sharpened very much, and I was highly awake and got the answer to every question I just thought about. Nothing was left unclear. There were no lies, not even misunderstandings. I tried to tell my parents about this, but I couldn't say a word. It was too overwhelming and holy to me. I was so full of joy in the days, weeks, and months after this that I sang all day long, even on the streets, although I was quite shy. Strangely, this experience seemed to get more into the back of my memory as I went to school and university, and only sometimes shone through. But in the last years, it came back and helped me to get through some tough times in business and my private life. I had been on the wrong path and hadn't realized it. Remembering my experience helped me to understand and to find my purpose. And now I work as a psychologist in my own practice, especially with children. It's just the way I was shown in my experience, although as a child I didn't even know what a psychologist was, and later on had completely forgotten about this. I'm a very sensitive person, and this really helps me to do my work. Sometimes I just know which problem a child or adult has and how I can help them. I've read a lot about similar experiences in order to understand all this more, and came to the conclusion that my experience probably was an STE, not an NDE, which I, for the lack of a better term, had thought for a long time. Later on, I had other experiences like dreaming future events, hearing the voice of my deceased aunt call my name, and some trouble with electric devices when I touched them. I understood the power of prayers, and many of my wishes came true when I prayed with all my heart for them to be fulfilled. For 50 years, I've kept my experience in my heart, but now I feel I should tell others about it. May it be another piece of the great puzzle that all of the experiences and all of the scientists are putting together right now in this exciting time. And here her story ends. This next story, too, comes from the files of IANDS. While awaiting shoulder surgery, a young Australian woman unexpectedly leaves her body and goes to a place filled with light. And the experiencer writes, "When I was in my late 20s, after a difficult interaction with my mother, she punched me. A few weeks later, I developed pain in my left shoulder. I saw various practitioners, naturopaths, acupuncturists, energy healers, sports therapists, osteopaths, chiropractors, doctors, and eventually orthopedic surgeons. My shoulder was frozen, and I had inflammation in the joint that was becoming increasingly painful. One night I took our dogs for a walk, and they charged off in different directions at the same time, with me in the middle holding their leads. My shoulder was pulled in opposite directions, and I could feel the pain increasing. Later that night, the pain was so bad I couldn't stay in bed. I spent the rest of the night leaning on cushions and pillows on a mattress in the spare room. After a couple of painful nights like that, we bought a recliner rocker so I could sleep semi-upright. Surgery was possible, but it was a long wait, and I was put on painkillers every 4 hours. Most nights I would take my painkillers and sit in the recliner and sleep for maybe an hour and a half, then wake in pain and wait for another 2.5 hours before I could take the next dose. Some nights I only managed to get a couple of hours sleep. One such night I was sitting up with a Duna's comforter, wrapped around me and a hot water bottle on my lap, trying to manage the pain and waiting for time to pass so I could take the next dose of medication. Suddenly, I found myself in what I call the golden place, a place that I knew was not of this world, a place filled with beautiful golden light, and I was totally free of pain. I was surrounded by that radiant golden light, and it was completely immersive, a completely immersive experience. Warm gold light was all around me and through me, permeating all aspects of my being. The light seemed warm, but this was not a physical warmth. It was a heartfelt warmth, the warmth of love, a golden embrace. Words are just not adequate to describe this place or this experience. They in no way do justice to it. Light and love permeated every part of me. I knew I was loved beyond any experience of love I had ever felt on earth, with a love that was way beyond earthly love, and I was at peace. I seemed to be at the edge of this golden place. I was immersed in golden light, and the golden light spread out before me and on into the distance. There were energetic beings in the more central part of this place, moving around a little away from me, perhaps attending to their own business, and there were presences who were there with me, caring for me, guiding me, loving me. All was love. The word divine comes to me, but that word doesn't even begin to describe the loving presence that was at the essence of that golden place. How blessed am I to have been transported out of my painful earth life to that experience of sublime love and joy. I have tried to describe this to people, but the picture my words paint is pale in comparison to the reality of the experience. How can I help others understand? How can I help others believe that when we die, we go to that golden place? There was a knowing for me in that place. I remember knowing that all human beings go there eventually after they die. Earlier, at 9 years of age, I had an experience of a divine presence speaking to me, a being who loved and accepted me. There was no thought of judgment or punishment. I did not believe in the heaven I had been told about in my church and had never thought of the beyond visually in the way I experienced it that painful night as an adult, although saying that does not do justice to how I saw the light of those beings. My earthly eyes were not with me. It was my soul that saw these things. When I found myself in that golden place, I simply knew I had come home and that this was where my soul belonged. I think there was healing occurring for my soul in that golden place. Love heals. That is a truth for me that dates back to my father holding my foot with love when I was sick as a teenager. My experience in that golden place confirmed the healing power of love for me, but I cannot explain how. I knew my physical pain was not being healed, but that wasn't a focus for me. It simply didn't matter. Time is different there. So I have no idea how much time passed on earth while I was there. It seemed like eternity, soaking up that love and light and soul healing. I somehow knew I was being given the choice to stay there or to return to earthly life. My focus was just being there. It was so beautiful. Why would I want to leave? Communication seemed to come to me from those spiritual beings caring for me, but there were no words spoken. The word telepathy is too limited. It really doesn't describe how I received that communication. I just knew what was being said. Love and care flowed continually to me, and there was the knowledge that I could stay there, but I was encouraged to look back at my earthly life and then choose whether I would stay or go back. When my Sue died from suicide after I recovered from the first shock, I was angry with her. I had never considered suicide as an option, but once she died and I experienced the pain of losing her and witnessed the impact of her death on my parents, I knew I could never hurt others in that way. The door to voluntary death slammed shut, and even though I hadn't considered that door as an option for me, suddenly that option had gone. Now here I was in that wonderful golden home where my soul truly belonged, being given that option again. With that loving encouragement, my focus turned towards my earthly life, and I became conscious of my husband and my 2 teenage daughters. My husband had lost his first wife to a very rapid cancer some years before I met him, and his children had lived through the death of their mother at a young age. I couldn't leave them and my daughters, my stepchildren, and give them pain in that way. My pain diminished in importance when I sensed the pain my death might cause. I also had many clients who would feel the pain if I died. I had twice had to tell someone else's clients that their therapist had died, and it was like slamming them with something so big it was overwhelming to them and me. So that also informed my choice. I decided to come back to this earthly life. My journey back to my earthly body was a difficult one, even though my decision to return to Earth was strong. I seemed to climb down a ladder and understood this was my imagination, showing me a structure that my earthly self could understand to help me come back into my earth body. I climbed down that ladder slowly, with intent, gradually becoming more distant from the experience of that golden place of love and light, but still feeling the beauty of that light and those presences, and still feeling loved. When what seemed to be the tips of my spiritual toes touched the top of my earth body head, I began to feel my physical pain again. It was like climbing into a swimming pool filled with pain. I climbed back fully into my physical body, and the pain was just as bad. However, my attitude to it was different. It was okay to be in pain, for I knew that one day I would return to that golden place and leave my earthly pain behind. It was okay, and it wasn't okay. The pain was just as bad, and I still couldn't lie down, but I was able to accept that this earthly journey is just a small step along the way for my soul, and I knew my human form would eventually die, and I would return home to that golden place. I also knew that my pain was an opportunity for further soul development in this life, and I valued that. Eventually, I had surgery, and most of that pain eased. And here the experiencer's account ends. My thanks to all who send in their stories for me to read, and my thanks to IANDS as well. For listeners who might like to have their own NDE or OBE stories read by me on this program, please send an email of your story to me at contactnderadio@gmail.com. That's one word, contactnderadio@gmail.com. My thanks to all of you for listening. If you'd like to hear this show again or any of our more than 500 archived ad-free NDE interviews, go to TalkZone's NDE Radio site and hit the Past Shows button, or go to our YouTube channel, NDE Radio with Lee Witting, where you can subscribe to and comment on the complete NDE Radio library. And listen next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern at TalkZone for more NDE Radio. I'm your host, Lee Witting, saying once again, thanks for listening.